This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to AFLAC for supporting I Love Black People Radio.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of I Love Black People. And thank you so much for joining us and on this journey to amazing blackness. You know, I'm always so pumped up by the comments and the messages we get from so many of you. And thanks for the inspiration. Keep it coming. Those of you who don't know, info at I Love Black People is our email. You know, definitely send us the emails. Our phone number is 202-558-5143. We're based in Washington, D.C., but of course, you know, we have a global approach because we represent and discuss issues that are relevant to 1.5 billion people. When we talk about the African diaspora, the blackness is about the size of China. So, you know, it's so much to do, so much to talk about. Let's get into today's episode. And this is something that's local to the DMV area. If you don't know what that means, DC, Washington, DC, District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. So this region is called the DMV region and is important as a metropolitan. And even though there's been a lot of gentrification in Washington, D.C. over the last, I'd say, 30 years, I would say it started probably in the early 90s. Black folks didn't move to Idaho. They moved to right across the border in Maryland. Some in Virginia, but mostly Maryland. So the concentration of Black intellectuals, Black educated, Black affluent folks is pretty huge in this area. And it's very important because when we're talking about self-determination, being able to affect change in the world, this area probably has the highest concentration of some of the most amazing educated and affluent Black women in the world, and in one area. And I think it's important that we look at the leadership in this particular area. And one of the folks that's running for office is Sister Angela Alsobrooks, who's running for U.S. Senator. And in the United States, there's 2 senators. So no matter the population of the state, of course, you know, there's 50 states. DC should be a state, so it should be 51. And it's important when we're looking at that is understanding how the United States is really not a direct democracy. When I say 50 states and 2 senators per state, that means some states have a large population, but they only get 2. Some states are super small, but they get 2. And in the states that are super small, the number of Black folks are very low in those states. So what you end up having is representation that is in many ways not in proportion to the actual population of the country. And one of those areas, again, I say U.S. Senator. So when you look at that as a starting place, Maryland, which has a high population of, like I said, educated as well as affluent Black folks, has never had a Black senator. And in the United States, we oftentimes talk about what they call red states, blue states. Red states are states that have a high voting population for Republicans, and then blue states are for high population of Democrats. Well, Maryland is one of those places high amount of Democrats, of course. Again, a high population of black voters who disproportionately are oftentimes Democrat. And then like a state like Georgia, which is what I call a red state, mostly Republican, they've been able to elect a black senator in a red state, which speaks to a lot about the organizing in Georgia. Now, with all that being said, we still haven't had one in Maryland. We have an opportunity now with Sister Angela Alsobrooke, who is literally a well-accomplished, politician in her own right. She's been the Prince George's County is one of the major counties in Maryland. And again, in the United States, states are divided up into smaller jurisdictions called counties. So within these counties, they have certain leadership. And she's been one of the leaders in one of the most, influential counties, probably in one of the most influential counties in the country. So she has a background and track record of leadership. And literally, like I said, in looking at how important Maryland is in the population of educated and affluent black people, the population is rich with talent. And when you talk about the cream of the best rising to the top, Angela Alsobrooke, represents some of the best. And it's important, though, that's not enough, unfortunately. We've seen in Maryland, again, a blue state that's disproportionately Democrat is elected even Republican governors who've ran against very well-known, very amazing, capable leaders from the black community and defeated them. Anthony Brown, who was the lieutenant governor under Martin O'Malley, who was a very, very popular governor, served 2 terms and was even a presidential candidate. Meaning had such a popularity, he had national stature. And his lieutenant governor, which is in a way kind of like a vice president relationship, had an opportunity to literally ascend to the governorship and lost to a Republican. And this is after 2 terms, after serving as he did. Anthony Brown, this is a person who had a education pedigree that included, Ivy League schools, which are oftentimes, indicators of political, successful people. Also served in the military, so the whole patriotism and the nationalism, and he got defeated in a blue state by a Republican. And then, and again, this was a candidate that was very moderate. Again, like I said, a military background, went to conservative Ivy League university. Really was someone from a more of a mid to maybe even conservative. Lost to a Republican. And then we had Ben Jealous, who was the executive director of the NAACP in Baltimore, won the primary and lost again to a Republican governor. So, and let me just say this another way. Both of these candidates, Anthony Brown as well as Ben Jealous, won their primary. So they ran in a blue state, won and beat all the other Democratic candidates to be the nominee to represent the Democratic Party. They won. Everyone in this, and let me just say how this typically goes. When they say these colors, red or blue, and some are purple, they say, which are kind of like swingy, kind of depends on what's the issues are, who's running. You may not be able to put it in a particular party category, but typically, if it's a red state, meaning a Republican state, whomever wins the primary in the Republican Party ends up winning the general, just because the numbers. At the end of the day, a red state has more voters that are Republicans, so literally have more people that are going to come out in the general, and they defeat whoever the Democrats come up with, and vice versa. If it's a blue state, the same thing. And this is especially statewide. There's issues like gerrymandering, where they try to make different districts That's for like congressional districts or like state local elections. But as it relates to running statewide, which the Senate and the U.S. Senate and the governorship, those are both statewide. Normally, it's very clear. Whoever has the most voters of the party wins, hands down. As I said, in both these instances, the candidate that was, and these are black candidates, very capable, both were defeated by the Republican. So now, fast forward this year. So now we're dealing with a super qualified candidate in the name of Angela Alsobrooks, who's, her record, her background, she University of Maryland is a lawyer, Delta, went to Duke, very accomplished. She's now running against, some opponent that's been self-funding. Actually, the guy is owns liquor stores. Now, if you can imagine that, liquor stores. She's running. This is a lawyer who's representing one of the most profound, prolific counties in Maryland. And this guy, his background is he made his money selling alcohol throughout Maryland, and now he's literally a multi-millionaire, and it's like spending enormous amounts of money on his campaign. And when you have money in politics, and there's a case called Citizens United where we talk about the super PACs, and as y'all probably know, we created one of the first black-led super PACs back in 2011 called 1911 United, and it was between the members of Omega Psi Phi fraternity and Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. And we did it as in honor of the 100th anniversaries of both our organizations. And we wanted to give back to the Black community that had supported our organizations for these 100 years. And we kind of looked at it like, if you look at something like the Martin Luther King Memorial, the members of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, were put on earth to lead us in that. And they did it. They made sure that monument actually happened. And as a community, we should always be thankful, I think, for what the members of Alpha Phi Alpha did to make sure their member, but also a huge iconic figure in Martin Luther King, actually got his monument as he rightfully should. And they were very instrumental with that. Without them, it may not have, there's always, good intentions. There was the road to some places paved with good intentions. Well, this road was paved with alphas making sure it got done, and we are thankful. And even with the Million Man March, a lot of people don't know this, but the members of Phi Beta Sigma literally gave up their international headquarters to allow the Nation of Islam to organize the Million Man March. This is before any of the other organizations were really, enthusiastic about it. Many people, of course, were afraid to be associated or affiliated with, the courageous, amazing Minister Louis Farrakhan. And many organizations, were very hesitant. You're talking about Islam, and, most of the Black folks in America are Christians. Well, the Phi Beta Sigma showed out, and they made sure that they had a place for everyone to meet, no matter who you were, what your background. And the Million Man March had to be one of the most successful organized events of our people to this date. And it would have been much more difficult to happen without the support of Phi Beta Sigma. And so we always tip our hats and raise a cup to the brothers of Phi Beta Sigma for their courage and their commitment to us as a people to support the Million Man March as early, as consistent as they did. And they didn't wait for it to become fashionable. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And so when we looked at those issues, we said, what can we do as organizations? And I'm going to say this, as big as these organizations are, similar as Omega Psi Phi fraternity and Kappa Alpha Psi are, really never did anything a national scale or scope together. You know, depending on certain areas, there was always good camaraderie in certain areas and maybe not so much in others. But in a national level, it hadn't taken place. And so we couldn't officially organize in as because again, these organizations are 501. They're nonprofits and they can't be political. They can do things they can't be partisan. They can do things like help with voter registration, but they can't tell you who to vote for. So we never connected the super PAC directly or any kind of way to these organizations. And we said 1911 United, and we took as our mission to make sure that Barack Hussein Obama was reelected for president, that he would not be a one-term president. We used to say, like, look, I don't care what we do or don't do this year. We may not remember how much money we made or what we were into, but we'll remember if President Barack Obama was a one-term president. Like, we would be forever ashamed and embarrassed if our generation dropped the ball and allowed the first black president to be a one-termer. So what we did was we marshaled brothers and sisters together, and the only way we could actually give our support at the scale we wanted to and needed to was not through a PAC, not through just volunteering 501c4. 501c3 is truly just charitable. 501c4 is a status where you can be issue oriented, but you can't tell people to vote for a particular candidate. Well, we weren't going to play no games. We wanted to tell people to vote Barack Obama. We weren't trying to register folks just to register. We wanted them to go out and vote for Barack Obama. The only vehicle at that time that we could use to do that was what they had just created called a super PAC. And it was under Citizens United, where they deemed under that, judgment, under that ruling, was that money was basically speech, and people had the right to give their money and put it behind what they support, and in much as one would say you have free speech. Now I don't necessarily, no, I don't agree with that, like, full stop. However, it was the only vehicle that would allow us to support Barack Obama in the way we were supporting him, because even if you're not giving dollars, we were getting people to volunteer and support his candidacy. Those efforts were truly in-kind contributions, and those in-kind contributions are worth money. And again, there are limits that you can give a campaign. So if we had done this without the super PAC, we would have ended up violating, Federal Election Commission rules, and we didn't want to do anything that would embarrass the president or cause any grief. So it was through the super PAC model we were able to. I mean, we raised maybe around $250,000, a little less than that, and we had fundraisers throughout the United States. But the biggest focus was volunteers. We made sure we organized our people to give something that was more precious than money, and that was their time. And many of our people had never done anything for a campaign. Most folks thought that was like a government function, but we were, educating our people, like, these are things we have to do beyond going to vote to make sure that our candidate wins. And when we look at what's going on with Angela Alsobrooks, we need more people to come out and volunteer. And she's somebody who's been committed. One of the things that we learned with Barack Obama is making sure we hold even Black folks accountable for our agenda. No matter what, we need to hold them accountable. And what we've been seeing in Maryland, in many instances, the mighty dollar ends up influencing more so than principles and agendas what these politicians do. So we must make sure that the rich group of people who have the ability to run for office and spread money around, that spreading of money can't be the determining factor who wins. Because again, we need to make sure we're steadfast that with this powerful vote thing, that we are using it to empower ourselves in a way that actually can change the lives of our people. And when we have candidates like, like we've seen, where they can use money no matter what their policies are, it becomes very problematic. 'Cause even with the most recent, candidate, calling, names, using, racial epithets. I'm not going to use, this is a family show, but some of the, you can, don't listen to me. Washington Post and Washington Post don't always tell the truth, but if you just do your research, you've got people who would think that they can say and do anything because they have a large amount of money. And some of the ways that we fight back, or we can protect our community, is make sure when we have a courageous sister like Angela Osbrook in a race like this, that we do everything that we can. It's not enough to wish our people well. And I know we keep Sister Angela in prayer. We need to keep her in prayer, because when you have leadership like that, they're willing to stand up and go against many of the, I guess, well-moneyed people. They need our support. And even if we don't have more money than those rich folks, our energy, our efforts, our work, our time is priceless. And she's someone who needs that. It's important that we support her and support our agenda, and make sure that we don't allow those who have able to make money off selling alcohol. I mean, just imagine, that's the claim. And I drink, what I'm saying? But again, drinking, gambling, these are not necessarily professions that we would hold up as the highest of our ability as a people. So I think what's important, we got to look at this as an opportunity to say, we have the talent, we have the candidate in the race that can do the most for our people. We need to make sure the people do the most for her. And it becomes one of those things where, even when you see how politics is done, they used to call it buttering the bread, how they butter the bread. And some of these folks, with money, they butter the bread on both sides, they call it. So they put money on all the candidates. They butter the bread on. Now, instead of buttering any bread, they said, look, I'm going to run. And they literally give slabs of butter out to all the folks they want to support them, allegedly. And you'll see people supporting these folks in ways that you never thought would be reasonable, because it doesn't, the agenda of one candidate is not the same as the other. But when they're buttering the bread, it gets real toasty. It gets real, it's very interesting. So again, these are the things that we need to do. And again, reach out to, read what's going on. I tell people we need to be loyal to an agenda. We need to make sure that, again, in places especially like Maryland, where the population of Black people is so critical to all bodies of politics, we need to be the determining factor of whomever wins in any race. So it's important that power is respected, not just in lip service, but again, for an agenda. And even, like I said, money, everybody's, of course, we always talk about financial, generational wealth, financial literacy. Everybody talk about the money, but we got to stand on principle. And I think that sometimes gets missed in politics. It's probably one of the unfortunate, situations in politics. One of the places where you can be a liar and people see it as a good thing. He's spinning it, or not being trustworthy. But we need to be committed to our principles. And I tell people, even if you don't know or if the candidate is going to win or not, you should vote on principles. Don't let popularity, don't let, money be your determining factor. You got to live with your vote based on, again, something that's probably more internal. Our ancestors sacrificed not so we could vote lessers of evils, but so we can vote our conviction and our agenda. So it's very important that we don't allow people to exploit our vote and have us voting for evil, because somehow they make us think that's more expedient. But again, voting your conscience and voting your principle is probably more honorable to our ancestors than voting for people who wouldn't be supporting the liberation of our people back in the days of our forefathers. And so we got to hold everyone, I don't care, Democrat, Republican, all these political parties, we should hold them accountable. And whomever wins, they represent you too. It doesn't matter if you didn't vote for them, they represent you. We need to hold all of these candidates accountable, all of these politicians. Even if you didn't vote, you should vote. Even if you didn't vote, they still represent you. You have to hold them accountable. So let's never walk away not being, first of all, holding ourselves accountable, and then making sure that the system that we're living in is forever changed by our engagement, our involvement, and making sure we support those who champion our ideas and our agenda, like our good sister Angela also Brooks. So with that being said, as I always wrap it on up, I am because we are. I wouldn't be me without you. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this. We couldn't do it without you.
This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to Aflac for supporting I Love Black People Radio.